Before Arabia became the center of massive empires, before it dominated global energy, it was a land guarded by pure silence. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a journey, an archaeological journey really, into one of the harshest, most uncompromising landscapes on Earth. We're looking at a world shaped entirely by heat, sand, and survival. So let's dive right in and set the stage for how a landscape can literally forge an entire civilization. Just let that quote sink in for a second. Void of the breath of life. That's intense, right? But that is exactly how ancient travelers described the deep interior of the pre-Islamic Arabian environment. We're talking about a completely mysterious and deeply unforgiving emptiness here. Because to truly understand the people who emerged from this place, we've got to first wrap our heads around the terrifying and beautiful isolation of the land itself. Historically, the people living there called this massive landmass Jazirah al-Arab, which translates to the island of the Arabs. And honestly, looking at its geography, that name hits the nail on the head. You've got the Red Sea to the west, the Persian Gulf out east, the Arabian Sea to the south, and to the north, just a vast, basically impassable desert barrier cutting it off from the rest of Asia and the Mediterranean. It's a massive 1,027,000 square mile landmass, effectively floating in a sea of water and sand, totally isolated from the world. Which brings us to kind of the million-dollar question for this explainer. How does life actually flourish here? This is one of the driest, hottest places on the planet. Think about the other great cradles of civilization for a second. Egypt had the Nile, right? Mesopotamia had the Tigris and Euphrates. Arabia? Arabia has absolutely zero perennial rivers. Not a single one. The starkness of that reality is staggering when you really think about it. Over 1 million square miles, and not a single navigable river flowing to the sea. So how did anyone survive at all? Well, the secret lies in wadis. These are deep, dry riverbeds that basically scar the earth. When those rare, violent rainstorms actually hit, these wadis suddenly flood, acting as a temporary, totally unpredictable water network. And when they dry up again, they double as the absolutely vital caravan routes connecting all the scattered settlements. Now, it's easy to picture the desert as just one endless beige sandbox, but it's actually got these distinct, really powerful personalities. First up, you have the Nufud up in the north, these giant, rolling white and reddish dunes that can, amazingly, bloom into a temporary green paradise for wandering shepherds after a winter rain. Then, connecting the peninsula, there's Al Dahana, which is this sprawling ribbon of red sand. And finally, the most alien of the bunch, Al Hira. This isn't even sand. It's a hostile, cracked landscape of corrugated black volcanic lava fields. Beautiful, sure, but incredibly dangerous. But if you follow that red ribbon of sand far enough south, you eventually hit the ultimate void, the Rub al-Khali, the vacant quarter. It is, without a doubt, the most dreaded, mysterious expanse in all of Arabia. We're talking about 250,000 square miles of absolute no man's land. To put that into perspective, for centuries, no foreign explorer ever dared to even try crossing it. It's just this terrifying infinity of untouched sand ocean. In fact, it is so isolated that it's famous for bizarre phenomena, like singing sands that literally hum in the wind, and geographic anomalies like a hidden lake of salt water right in the middle of nowhere. It's nature at its most extreme. So against this apocalyptic backdrop, a really supreme drama of existence takes place. And the cast of this survival story is what we call the triumvirate of the desert. These are the three great actors that make human life even remotely possible out here: the Bedouin nomad, the camel, and the date palm. Honestly, without any one of those three, human history in this region just simply stops. Let's start with the date palm. This tree is incredibly revered. It's practically the sacred queen of Arabian flora. The historical texts tell us that to possess the two black ones, which meant water and dates, was the absolute ultimate dream of every Bedouin. It was the bedrock of nomadic nourishment. When they're crushed, the pits even feed the camels. It is quite literally the tree of life in a landscape that's otherwise defined by death. And then there's the camel. I actually love this quote from the scholar Springer. He said, "The Bedouin is the parasite of the camel." Now, I know that sounds a bit harsh, but it really highlights this complete, total dependence. The camel is the nomad's nourisher, their vehicle, their alter ego. The Bedouin drinks its milk when water is scarce, feasts on its meat, weaves tents from its hair, and even uses its dung for fuel. To the nomad, this isn't just a pack animal. It's the special gift of Allah, the ultimate vessel of survival. So the absolutely crucial point here is this. The desert wasn't just a place these people happened to live on. It was an active participant in their history. The crushing heat, those trackless wastes, the agonizing scarcity of water, these were just hardships to overcome. They were actually an impenetrable fortress. The desert acted as the ultimate custodian of their sacred tradition. It was their very first line of defense, preserving the purity of the Arab bloodline, their deeply poetic language, and their fiercely independent identity from massive foreign empires like the Romans and the Persians. But there's also this really fascinating duality in Arab animal husbandry. If the camel represents rugged, nomadic utility and gritty day-to-day survival, the Arabian horse represents something entirely different: pure luxury, breathtaking speed, and ultimate prestige. The horse was actually a relatively late import into ancient Arabia, but once it got there, man, its bloodline was kept immaculately pure. The devotion to these aristocratic thoroughbreds was just intense, because unlike a camel, a horse doesn't have the biological adaptations to survive out there. Keeping one alive in the deep desert was incredibly difficult. It was an animal of warfare and royal elegance. There are actually historical accounts noting that in times of desperate drought, while the children in the camp might literally be crying out from thirst, the master would pour the very last drop of water into a pail to set before the horse. That is how deeply valued their speed and lineage were in desert culture. Now, all of this builds up to a massive historical paradox. We've spent this entire explainer talking about isolation, barren wastelands, and sheer gritty survival. Yet this isolated island of sand actually sat dead center at the crossroads of ancient global civilizations. How wild is that? The evolution of their economy is honestly staggering. First, you had the southern regions producing frankincense, which was this ultimate luxury good demanded by temples all the way from Rome to India. Second, the peninsula became the undisputed global center for camel breeding, basically providing the logistical backbone for entire empires. And finally, hidden right beneath that same unforgiving terrain lay massive oil fields, discovered in 1933. The very geography that completely isolated them was hiding the exact resources that would go on to shape the entire world. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. How did a land defined by its emptiness, a place where just waking up and surviving was a daily triumph, end up forging a culture that would burst forth to build global empires and eventually hold the keys to the modern world's energy? It is an absolute masterpiece of geographical determinism. The desert didn't just test the Arabs, it forged them into something unbreakable. Think on that the next time you look at a world map. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.